Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm your host, Daniel Davis. Today we're going to talk about something that's going to be very important, and that is, what would you do when technology fails? Even more importantly, are you prepared for things such as making sure that you take care of your health? Today we're going to talk about what you can have when the high-tech medical environment fails and you have to deal with low-tech medicine, what to have in that cabinet. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is our guest of the book, When Technology Fails, a manual for self-reliance, sustainability, and surviving the long-term emergency. And I'd like to welcome to our program Matthew Stein. And Matthew, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Thanks a lot for having me on today, Daniel.
Now, it's really important for many of us who have experienced 9/11 or there was Hurricane Katrina or even the tsunami that sometimes things happen and the question has, are you prepared for what's going on? And even more importantly, how you can take care of yourself, especially your health, when the pharmacy is down or hospitals are overcrowded, what to do then. So let's talk about what the low-tech medicine cabinet is and what the importance is of having it and what should be in it.
Well, it's really extremely important, and I'd like to stress that it's not just when the hospitals are down or when there's a disaster. Mm-hmm. I mean, about last Christmas, Mariana Britti, who's this just beautiful woman from Brazil who was the Miss Brazil, and she was in the top 10 finalists in the Miss World pageant, and she checked herself into the hospital with a urinary infection. And it turned out that it was antibiotic resistant and it spread through her body. Now, they transferred her to another top-notch facility, pumped her full of drugs, and a few days later they ended up amputating her hands and feet because infection had caused the swelling and caused the blood to stop flowing, and they were getting gangrenous. And a few days later, they put her on a ventilator, and then she died.
Wow.
So having these kinds of things on hand is just so important in this day and age when you have antibiotic-resistant superbugs traveling around the world. See, in our factory farms, we're making our farm animals into breeding grounds for superbugs. And in fact, there's people who speculate that the swine flu was made in the lab, but there's others that say no, it was created in the pig farms, because these pig farm animals are fed huge amounts of antibiotics to keep them healthy in what is really naturally an unhealthy condition. And so when they're fed antibiotics all the time, they become breeding grounds for superbugs. So it's very possible that the swine flu came from factory farm-fed animals who are fed antibiotics on a regular basis. So anyway, on to what you should have on hand. Now, the single most important item to have on hand is what's called a colloidal silver generator. And what that is a very simple device, and I show people in my book how to make it with 3 9-volt batteries and a 24-volt light bulb. And it puts an electric charge across some pure silver wires dipped into water. And then the most amazing thing happens. If you look at the wires in the solution of pure water, it looks like a fine strands of smoke are coming off the wires. And what that is not actually smoke, because it's in water, but it's fine particles of charged silver particles, like tiny microscopic particles. They're so small that they look like smoke in the water. Mm-hmm. Now, what these do is the silver particles are toxic to all known pathogenic bacteria. And there's a number of metals that are toxic to bacteria, but silver is the only one that kills the bacteria but doesn't harm people. So that's what makes it so magical. A modern researcher who figured this out, his name is Robert Becker, and he was a orthopedic surgeon and a medical researcher, wrote in a really amazing book called The Body Bioelectric. And he found that he researched the body's microelectric healing properties and found that charged silver particles boosted these natural healing properties. So he was able to take silver particles charged and put them into wounds of people whose legs were scheduled for amputation because they weren't healing and there was fractures and there was gangrene. And using the charged silver particles, he was able to save these people's limbs. Well, then the modern physicist, Bob Beck, not to be confused with Robert Becker, he figured out how to make the modern simple colloidal silver generator I show you how to build in my book. Mm-hmm. So this
we've got
is the number one thing.
Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Well, let's move on to the next one. So how about some some herbal remedies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, some of the top herbal remedies I recommend that you have on hand. Number one is grapefruit seed extract. Now, this is something you can't really make yourself, or at least I don't know how to make it. But you buy it in the health food store, and it comes in a little squeeze tube, and you put about 15 drops in a glass of water. And this stuff is really amazing. It's a broadband antibiotic, antifungal, antibacterial solution, and you drink it. And people find that it heals all kinds of things. So this is something to have in your medicine chest. And one of the great things about a lot of these herbs is that they don't have harmful side effects like a lot of pharmaceutical medicines. And so you have these on hand because you may find, like my wife and I found on a couple of occasions, when Western medicine antibiotics just simply weren't working and my wife wasn't getting better, that these alternative remedies did heal her. So number two is elderberry. Now, sometimes elderberry has been called the medicine chest of the country people, and it's very effective against viruses. In fact, there's an Israeli company that made an extract out of the elderberry called Sambucol, and they found that it's extremely effective against avian flu, human flu, and swine flus. So this is something that's more effective than Tamiflu, and many people don't realize it. But Tamiflu is only effective within the first 48 hours of the onset of symptoms. And it's really primarily most effective in the first 24 hours. Now, how many of us are going to get a cold or a sniffle, go to the doctor, and start pounding Tamiflu within the first 24 hours? I mean, that's the only time it's really very effective. And after the second 24 hours, it's moderately effective. And after that, it's pretty much ineffective. But many of these other herbal remedies and the silvers and things are effective throughout the cycle of the flu virus. So you want to have these things on hand, because if you're too late getting Tamiflu or Tamiflu doesn't work, these things do work. Next in the list is raw garlic. Now, you can buy garlic that's been specially processed in allicin tablets or capsules to preserve the qualities of the garlic. But if you buy like powdered garlic, or granulated garlic, it really doesn't cut it. So it's got to be either raw or specially processed. And garlic is very effective it's been shown effective against various tumors, tuberculosis, cholera, typhus, amoeba, dysentery. And if you got real bad athlete's foot, toenail fungus, you can crush the garlic and put it right in between your toes or on the toenail, and it really does work well. So that's the next on my list. Now, hyssop. This is a herb that we used to heal my wife from, she had a viral pneumonia that wouldn't respond to any medicines. And drinking, many cups a day of hyssop tea made from steeping the herb in water, she cleared up the infection very quickly in about 3 days' time. And according to Michael Chiara, who is one of the world's foremost herbalists, that hyssop is the only herb he knows of that's effective against active tuberculosis. So in this day and age, with extreme drug-resistant tuberculosis going around, remember the guy they were chasing all over the world? He went to his wedding in Europe, and they ended up flying a CDC, that Center for Disease Control jet, directly up to the Northeast and escorting him personally. A single guy, they flew a jet up there and picked him up. They were so worried about that antibiotic-resistant TB that he had. Hyssop is something to have on hand to kick it. I'll go through the rest real quick. Oregano oil, very powerful broadband stuff. Olive leaf extract. Usnea, that's something that comes from a lichen on trees. And tea tree oil. If you get an infection like an affected knuckle and you put your Neosporin on it and it's not doing anything because the skin is already sealed over, well, you put some tea tree oil on that, and the tea tree oil has this penetrating quality. It goes right through healed over skin to get the infection inside. Teenagers use it on pimples. Great stuff to have on hand.
Very good. When Technology Fails is the book. There are many, of course, more to this list and more detail that you can find out more about that. Can you please give out a website, Matthew Stein?
Sure. There's a lot of great tips and lists, and they're all free on the website, and it's www.whentechfails.com.